Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you this morning? And welcome to Complex PTSD TV. My name's Linda. I'm your certified trauma recovery coach, and it's wonderful to be here with you this morning. If you're here for the first time, say g'day. You're now a adopted Aussie, part of our global family. And if you're here for the replay, do a hashtag replay. Remember that we like to share for the millions of people around the world who still don't have access to understanding that this information is now available, and also that it's only 5 to 6 years old, so we're all learning on the go. So we like to help our silent majority out by liking and sharing the work that we do here. And welcome everybody to class. It's wonderful to have you here. This morning's going to be a bit vulnerable. I'm a bit nervous about sharing some of the information because it's work that I had to do about 10 years ago before I had any information about what to do and how to heal. So there was no complex PTSD diagnosis for me back then. I was bumbling around trying to work out what was going on, and the closest I could come to what was happening for me was an acquired brain injury. So during a certain part of that, my second marriage broke down, and it really gutted me because I thought that I had got the ingredients right for a marriage when I married a Christian man. And I thought that meant that they would be willing to stay and work things through, do the hard yards, and it didn't turn out that way, and that's okay. But after I came out of that marriage, I was deeply ashamed. I felt deeply guilty because there was nothing I could do to make that marriage work. And when you have a faith, there's a lot of shame and guilt that goes with it because of a whole bunch of rules that people have and haven't really thought too much about. But I was talking to a friend yesterday, and they said to me, their current situation is they have a lot of shame and guilt around their body, not being able to look at a photo of themselves, and it's this ongoing shame and guilt that happens for a lot of us. And I haven't come across anybody who's managed to ever not have shame and guilt because of what happened in our childhood. So she said to me, what did you do? And I said, well, I had to think back about what was happening for me during that time that I felt a lot of shame and guilt, and what I did. And I said to her, well, first of all, I read a lot of books about Christianity as in relationships and what was, supposed to happen. I said, and I read about these wonderful men who actually love and appreciate women who are healing, and I went, you know what, my one thing is in life that I always wanted was to have a healthy and whole relationship, because I've come from multiple generations where divorce is a thing on both sides of my family, and, I would have walked on water if I could to not have that experience. To have it twice just ripped everything out of me. So I said to her, what I did was I began to think, well, that'd be really lovely to have a guy like that in my life, but what do I need? Where am I at for myself? I'm riddled with this shame and guilt. How am I going to dispense of it? It's not like we can just go and open the garbage and just put it in and shut the lid and put it out for collection. It wasn't going away overnight. And I said to her, I realised that in order to address the shame and guilt, I had to begin to build my character. And their immediate response was, but I'm a good person. I said, yeah, we are. We are good people, but that's not the point. The point is, during our childhood, we didn't have a chance to develop our character because we always had to be who other people wanted us to be. All right? So you think about people pleasing and how that is such an inbuilt, ingrained part of our not just our character, but our way of being in this world. And we have to take these steps to build our character so that we have this strength and we can say, no, this is my character. So this is not just my character, but it begins to embody all of who I am, so that when the guilt and shame comes up, when we get triggered, which it did for me over the weekend, and I talked about that yesterday, I can now say, no, that's not who I am at my core. So what I did is went and picked out the characteristics that I wanted to develop and that I knew were already within me, but obviously from all the trauma, they weren't coming forward. So when they do come forward, when these characteristics come forward, then I'm able to say when somebody comes into my life, well, no, I'm not going down that road, because one, I can see that I've been down that road before and it wasn't productive. But two, also, I don't want to have somebody in my life that isn't working on their character as well. So being of good character is a healthy thing, but it's not something we get taught about, quite frankly. I've never even heard it taught. I just took this one next step. So for those of you who have a faith, you may have heard of fruits of the Spirit. So what I did was I began to look at them and say, well, they're good things to develop in my life. So the first one that I picked was love. Now, our immediate response is to say, but nobody loves me. Actually, it just reminded me of that song, Nobody Loves Me, Everybody Hates Me, Think I'll Go and Eat Worms. Sorry, I have a really warped sense of humour. But our response needs to change in order to develop love into our life. Now, it's not an easy thing to do because it doesn't come naturally when we haven't experienced it as a child. So we didn't have love built into us. We actually had a lot taken from us, okay? So I had to sit there and think, well, how can I build love into my life and love as part of my character in order that it becomes a really deep part of who I am? And I realised that the first thing I could do was help other people. Now, for me, helping other people, especially back when I couldn't talk, meant that I went into Facebook groups because I've been learning self-awareness stuff, counselling, self-help for quite a number of years, over a decade. Okay, more than a decade before I reached this stage. So what I would do is I was admin in a really large Facebook group for women who'd been abused. So I would go in and I would just love on them and help them to the best of my ability. And that began to build this whole feeling of love and that I'm safe to love because it was an experience. So what we want to do is build these experiences into our daily life. And they're experiences that we haven't actually had before. So being able to just love on someone and there's no expectations, there's no need for anyone to pay back. I could just sit there and give people answers that they needed or support them however I could, and there was no pressure, okay? There was no pressure to please anybody. I simply built it into my day-to-day life. And the same with peace. Anyone who comes near to me who has any level of drama, I'll walk away. I won't do it anymore because I know that it's too stressful for my system. But in order to build peace into my life, I had to be willing to work out where inside of me wasn't at peace with what was happening. So it's also being willing to not deny that there's areas of my life that I needed to build peace into. Sorry, I'm just about to sneeze. So, oh dear. It's acupuncture day, can you tell? The allergies on board. So, if you were to sit there and be really raw and real and honest with yourself, where do you feel in your life that you're not at peace? And with that information, you then want to say, okay, what's my one next step to building that peace into my life? Now, the thing is, with building our character and adding all these ingredients into our day-to-day life, we're actually impacting our whole nervous system and different parts of our brain as well. So it's very healing to take these steps, not just because of the brain and nervous system. So it builds strength into our life so that when things do come up that are stressful, we're able to turn it around and say, well, no, I want to choose peace. I want to choose love. I want to choose joy, and I want to choose, so there's patience, self-control, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness. So I want to build these things into my life each day in order that I become stronger in these areas. And that way, when somebody comes along who, it's like they come along and their energy is just totally not any of those things, and you just turn around and walk and go the other way because you're like, yeah, I'm not engaging with that anymore. And this is one of the reasons why we need to do it, is so that when these type of people come along who are like people from our past, we recognize them more readily, and we also are able to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I will not do this anymore. And because I feel that strength inside of me, I can break the shame and guilt cycle, okay? Because I then know that this is not who I am, okay? So how do we go about breaking the shame cycle so that it's effective for us as well? So we want to accept our starting point. My starting point was, I'm riddled with shame and guilt because I've had a marriage breakdown. In my mind, it shouldn't have broken down. We should have been able to work through things, and there was nothing I could do. I could have sat and talked about it for forever, but it wasn't going to take the shame and guilt away. I had to do something productive. Now, we don't want to return to the past. We don't want to bring up every facet that's happened. I mean, if you need to sit with someone and do it once or twice, that's okay. But we don't want to be stuck on repeat, all right? We want to build into our life so that we have strength, all right? So if you notice that you're going back to the past repeatedly, you want to ask yourself, right, what is it I need to understand about this? What is it I can build into my life that will give me peace, okay? And sometimes we may not always, get the peace, but we can turn our day around by building joy and having laughter happen. So these are conscious choices that we make in our life, all right? It's a conscious journey. One of the things we want to do is we want to listen to our thoughts. Now, with complex PTSD, we can have automatic thoughts, so we want to know when the automatic thoughts are happening so that we can shoot them down and say, well, that's not who I am. I'm not going down those paths anymore, okay? We want to own our emotions. We want to be able to feel safe, to feel what we're feeling, and then go, right, I want to be stronger than this. So what is the one character that I want to build into my life around this so I can manage it even more effectively? If you need to journal about it, sit down and journal about it, because often in journaling, because it can be so many senses are involved in journaling, especially if you add a cup of coffee and chocolate in, that includes taste. We've got to get creative here. Sorry, my sense of humour really is dry this morning. But seriously, where we've got the sense of sight, the sense of touch, add the coffee and chocolate, there's taste, okay? We're listening internally, but we are listening. Smell, okay, we can smell the coffee. And when we put all those senses together when we're journaling, it actually helps us open up different self-reflective parts, and we go, that makes sense now. We're joining dots together in order that we can unpack my one next step to build into my life, okay? Now, choose a characteristic that you want to build, all right? So one of my characteristics, now let's be real here, one of my characteristics that I'm always building is patience, okay? As a friend said to me once, patience, who's got time for that? I'm like, yeah, I've got things to do. But it's true. I need to build patience into my life, because when I do, then I put systems and strategies in place that help me manage things so I don't dissociate and I get more work done, okay? Because structure is good for our brain. So if we're going to pick a characteristic, pick one, and it's not easy, okay? I'm not saying any of this is easy, but I am saying it works. It absolutely works very effectively, okay? So then we want to implement it into our life with some strategies and structure. And even if you get the dissociation booklet and you get a daily checklist, okay, and you write out how you're going to check each day that you're building patience into your life, then that's what you want to do. Now remember, our sight is 40% of what we take on board. So when we're using our sight, it actually is very effective, okay? And remember, above and beyond everything else, this is so worth it, because it means we don't go down the same old path again when it comes to relationships, when it comes to the choices we make, when it comes to being able to manage shame and guilt, because we don't want to shove it down, all right? Shoving shame and guilt down doesn't work. It just makes us sick. It makes us isolate, makes us hide away. What we want to do is say, okay, it's here, it's present, but I can build something stronger into my life, okay? When I build character, I build something that's stronger than the shame and guilt, and so I can manage it a whole lot better as well. Okay, so this information is already in the free resource library for you to download. So I've got a free Breaking the Shame Cycle infographic for you, so that you can sit there and go through step by step what you want to work on. And there's an infographic with all the character traits on it as well. So when you put them together, you're going to start building something really solid into your day-to-day life, so that you know that when something else comes along that's too much pressure, you're going to say, no, that's not who I am. I don't need to feel shame and guilt for building this into my life, okay? I'm going to take my one next step. Okay, grab your free resources, and remember, you are loved and you belong, and I will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye for now.